Beautiful. First of all, thank you so very much for having me. What an absolute treat it is to see an absolute packed house. I think we're all very excited at the moment, aren't we? I haven't seen this sort of level of excitement for tech for 20, 25 years when everyone used to do their LAN parties and that sort of stuff in the late 90s. It's, we're all nerding out and it's good to see. So it's always hard at these events for me to decide what I'm going to cover because everybody comes from such a wide range of experiences. We've got technical founders, we've got people sort of working on, a wide range of different startups and businesses. So what I'll do with today, and I'm actually really happy that only half the room put their hand up with co-work because I'll focus the second half of the prezzo on co-work and how you can really kind of get some real good value out of co-work. And I think it's still very undervalued in terms of a tool. It's super powerful underneath, especially when you start getting your workflow sorted. So we'll go into that shortly. What I wanted to do first is introduce myself. I'm a Claude Ambassador for Australia. I'm one of 3, but there are a few more being added to the roster as we speak. I run my own consultancy, Spruik, have done for quite some time, digital agency. I've been coding since I was 11, had my first client when I was 12 years old. It was a website my dad, a factory my dad was working for at the time. So I think it was $600 or something. So the cricket bat I bought myself for Christmas that year was pretty good. Absolutely infatuated with tech, AI, been around it for quite some time, and I'm sure you guys are finding that Claude Code is just such a productivity hack. And I say this to everyone now, you can literally build anything with Claude. And if you do like to tinker on the weekend, I recommend having a look at hardware and tinkering around with some electronics and interfaces and that sort of stuff. It's super, super, super cool. So I thought I'd spend the first part of this presentation talking about where I've come from recently. And that's from Anthropic's Code with Claude Developer Conference over in Tokyo. So I was very lucky to get flown out by Anthropic, spent the week in Tokyo, and at the conference delivered a talk on my journey with Claude and how I got started with it as well. So in terms of tips and tricks, I think I'll get an opportunity later on to be able to sit down with you guys and have a look at, things like loops and goals and, really good sort of prompt and token caching capabilities and hacks there too. But I thought this might be of interest. It's a little bit fun. It's a little bit different. And you can see there, got the chance to stand with the man himself. He had 5 bodyguards around him, Boris Cherny, the inventor of Claude Code. So it was a quick in and quick out. But yeah, awesome opportunity to present on the main stage a week and a half ago. So what I presented, I built something called Manager 11. And I had this idea in my head since a 13-year-old teenager. I was absolutely infatuated with football management games. That's me there coding when I was 11, 12. Started coding in the late 90s. And like I said, absolutely infatuated with football and football management games, but also the underlying tech underneath them as well. Massive nerd. So to understand this a little bit more, and we'll get into the nerdiness of it, but back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was something called play-by-email football leagues. So you would have text files with your rosters, all your players on there, all their statistics and attributes, and you'd send your team in, and somebody who would manage the league would send out the results, and everything else in between was just very creative, very made up, a lot of fun. There was a program called ESMS, Electronic Soccer Management Simulator, still on GitHub to this date, which actually simulated all the games. So you would put your teams in, the program would spit out the commentary, and you'd have a result, and that would formulate the league. The gentleman who built it, Eli Bendesky, actually started this as a C++ project in the late 90s. It was his very first software project at university. He learned how to write C doing it, and he open sourced it right from the get-go. He worked on this from, I think, 99 till 2007, and it sat dormant until Claude decided to pick it up. So, as we see, just a little bit of code in there. That's what it looked like. That's what it used to look like. Really basic roster. You've got all your players, their attributes, and then the output. There was no graphics, no clicking, nothing was live. Very, very basic. So, the 90s called. Hopefully this works. There we go. So this is how the game used to operate. You'd type in each team, the text files. You'd get this output. You'd see people scoring goals. You scroll down, you'd get the end result, and there's all the statistics. So very, very basic, quite plain. So what we wanted to try and do with it is try and, I guess, to a point where it's just a little bit more exciting than what the 90s were used to. So we then implemented some live commentary. So rather than just getting a static text file, let's get that commentary coming out. At least it feels like it's live to a certain degree there too. Yeah, it's still okay, but there was obviously a little bit more that we could do with it. So as we go through, I'll just skip. What we decided to do was we decided to make this interactive. So this was the first part of porting this old system into something new. So we're just going to substitute a player, put him on. The commentary will then reflect that as well, which you can see. And there we go, it's resulted in a goal. Happy days. So that was in the deep of winter last year when I first picked up Claude Code. This was my first project. I threw Claude at it. It was freezing cold, and the reason why I know it was a freezing cold winter is because I'd started at 6 o'clock at night, and next thing I know, birds were chirping and it was 6 a.m. And I think we've all been there once we've gotten on a bit of a roll with Claude. Just absolutely immersed myself in this. I've probably spent 3,500 hours, maybe even 4, using Claude in the last 12 months. It's been my daily driver, and throwing it at these sorts of projects have been so much fun. So I was a teenager, had a dream, late 90s project. Every couple of years I'd pick it up thinking that going on Stack Overflow and asking the guys on there might help me, getting shut down, learning a little bit more about coding. No, still can't get there. And then Claude is what finally made all of this real. So 20 years it took, 10,000 lines of code and one of me. And I say one of me, 1+1 with Claude as my co-founder. So what did it become? We used Google Stitch for a bit of the UI, so that's one bit of recommendation I'd put out there. If you're looking at visuals, Claude Design has come out, I think, about a week ago. Really good, really handy, but for me anyway, probably still lacking a little bit of that polish. So I always like using a few different tools with what I do personally. So Google Stitch for design is also a really good, one to throw into the mixer as well. So what do we build? We took that old 90s style game and we brought it into a game called manager11.com. You can see your players now, you can interact with them, you can sell them, you can see what their fitness level's like. There's a full match breakdown into a database, so we track all of this. Match statistics are recorded for every single game that gets played. You can have a look at team lineups, see how your opposition lines up there as well. You can control all of your tactics, so change your formation, change your tactic in there as well. And you can see the little visuals as well in terms of like the interactions, which is what Claude, for me anyway, recently 4.8 and Fable just one-shotting things, and I'll answer questions on Fable and Mythos soon. I'm sure you've all got burning questions. Yeah, just super cool. So as we walk through, you can control every element of your club, youth academies, your medical centre, the whole lot. So very, very, very interactive. So if we cast our mind back 12 months, we started with Sonnet and Opus 4.5. Pretty basic, and I look back at these and go, oh, shudder a little bit. But this is how far we've come with all of these models. We came into 4.6, into 4.7, into 4.8, and then through the months as well, August into September, into October, and then finally into this year where you're starting to get the semblance of a game that people actually want to play. So one of the biggest takeaways from today as well, I just want to sort of say is I think most people think that AI helps you code faster, and it certainly does. But for me, Claude's actually what's made all of my visions and dreams real. You can build absolutely anything at the moment. And again, this is just, testament to this here. So for the techies in the room, what drives Manager 11? We've got a Next.js and React front end that you see. We've got an app server that sits underneath it with the API and all the game's rules. We've got a massive database, which is the game's single source of truth. So we've got all the rules in there, all the ifs, all the seasons, and all the rules dictating when a season will tick over. And then right at the bottom of it, we've still got that very same 1990s match engine driving it underneath. So I'm going to fast forward this very quickly just to get to what a game looks like once it's initialized. And so once you load the game in, essentially the commentary plays like we used to see in the text files. You can come through, you can see the minutes ticking through as well. You can see players taking shots, the player lineups on the left and the right-hand side, and then you can see here that I concede a goal, and then I decide to rage quit. So, Claude has worked at every single layer of this game, right through from the architecture, the porting of the C++ code to the WebAssembly language that we needed to do to make it truly multiplayer, the game logic, how the game would interact under certain conditions, and then the UI and the UX with a little bit of help from Google Stitch. But again, there's a few little hacks I'm happy to share later on that helps get you into a production-worthy and ready app. For me, the breakthrough was the model, and I presented this a day after Fable and Mythos was announced, so my slides are already dated. But I think everyone has seen, if you've been able to play around with Fable and the Mythos models, you can really see that the model does make a massive difference. One of the big bits of advice, probably 2 months before the conference, from Caitlin Leese, she's the VP of product for Anthropic. And one of the questions at a very similar event to this, the question was asked, what's your number one bit of advice to startup founders? And she said, stop worrying about the harness. The model will take care of everything. And I think everyone looked around the room and said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And then Fable happened. And then it was like, oh, okay, right. So if you are a startup founder and you're working on those harnesses, I think you've already been given a glimpse into the future here. Every developer, every staff member from Anthropic that we spoke to said exactly the same thing. Start thinking vertically. Stop thinking wide, because Claude and these models are going to handle most of it. Start thinking about really specific niches into what you're going in. Very specific problem sets these models won't necessarily focus on, because you're already seeing, you've probably had startup ideas over the last 12 months, and then all of a sudden, Claude's a CRM. Oh, Claude's an email platform. Oh, we've got another connector for that for Claude. So that was just one of the biggest takeaways. Every single room we went into, every single talk we listened to, they hammered home the same thing. And again, we had, 72 hours worth of Fable in the end. So, we've been given a look into the future. So, where do we come from with Manager 11? We came from batch files running EXEs. We had to run them hand by hand. Nothing was interactive. And now we have a live working app that's played in 16 different countries at my last check, I think there's 300 players on there, which isn't bad for a non-marketed little hobby game that I started in my bedroom as a teenager. So we compiled a 25-year-old match engine to WebAssembly, which is how we managed to get things going online. And we made it into something that it was never really designed to do. We made it interactive, we put it online, we've turned it into a live multiplayer game now. So, with a few little code changes, thank you, Claude, the match logic is now able to be run as a multiplayer game. From my sense, I had to learn a little bit of C along the lines, or at least how it sort of functioned, which, again, a year ago, I would have looked at you and said, no, I've got no idea. Running a real server, this was actually really interesting. I now run hardware and almost a sysadmin type role. I've got a bit of advice for people in the room. I've got a Hetzner box, so overseas, about $100 a month. It's probably one of the best investments I've made. If you're paying for render, if you're paying for, Cloudflare is actually quite affordable. If you are paying exorbitant hosting fees for your little startup ideas, I'd seriously recommend throwing Claude at one of these boxes, hosted boxes yourself. Security is a big one, obviously, but I've probably saved 85-90% of my hosting costs by doing DIY. I learnt this through tackling this game that I had on my mind for 20 years. So, we didn't just build a game with Claude, we moved Claude inside it. So, when you interact with AI clubs now, Claude actually rejects or accepts based on the personality types that we've set up for it. They pick their own team week to week, they stir the transfer market up, and they react in each different individual archetype's voice that we've set up. So we've got a few there. We've got a youth builder. We've got a pragmatist manager who responds in a balanced and professional way. We've got empire builders, you know, those real dedicated Real Madrid-style teams that get stuck into you in messages as well and taunt you. It scouts players, it bids. Every decision is Claude's. And we use Haiku because if I was using anything else, it would cost me an absolute fortune. So picking the right model for the right job, extremely important with this stuff as well. You've seen the game, but for me, realism is quite important too. So there's a real economy underneath. We simmed something like 400,000 games with Claude, and we worked out over the seasons what would happen with different players, attributes, the finances, and we actually got Claude to do essentially financial modelling for us to make sure that this game worked 100, 200, 300 seasons into the future. We've tuned it to feel right across the board. And we've got things like wages that, you know, clubs can manage as well. It's quite immersive once you get underneath it. But Claude, again, has just done all of this from top to toe. So I mentioned this gentleman, Eli, at the start, the original owner of the code. And I think we've all been here before. I pulled up a blog that he wrote in 2004. And as he was coming to the end of his development journey, he wrote, "I begin fearing that ESMS suffers from the second system syndrome." This is when he was trying to sort of add extra features to it, which is described by Wikipedia as the tendency to design the successor to a relatively small, elegant and successful system as an elephantine, feature-laden monstrosity. Now, we've all been there, haven't we? Your startup works, your tech works, but there's always a temptation to add that extra feature. Good old scope creep. And I think, you know, as we tinker through, there's a lot of people, a lot of founders, maybe non-tech founders, who don't come from a traditional software development background, who are being introduced to SDLC concepts for the very first time. Scope creep being one of them. And it's just, you know, I think Claude is an amazing tool. As an ambassador, I know I have to say that. But I also think there's a trap sometimes of doing more. I think I was having a chat to somebody earlier, and he was saying that, I get distracted building the product when I should be focusing on my marketing. And that's really true. So we'll go through some tools as well in terms of how I've been able to keep on track with a lot of this stuff. But yeah, there's always a temptation to get Claude to meddle and do more. So look, there were plenty of challenges. I wanted to give up. Like I said, I was working on this in the dead of winter last year, but pushed on. And as the models got better, results certainly improved as well. And as we go on, it keeps getting more real. So this is 4.8. We've decided to sort of throw Claude at, you know, can it build a stadium for our managers? This is quite boxy. We've then decided to change the prompt to see what it can do with extra grounds. I haven't thrown Fable at it yet, but I can only imagine what it might do. Stadiums under construction. And then we thought, look, what else can it build? Could it build some theme park style bits and pieces, different pitch designs? Can we throw in a hot dog stand? You know, can we throw in different box nets and whatnot, customizable seating arrangements? The lot. So, and I think the image qualities of Claude will certainly improve as we go. I think this is probably the area, for me anyway, that I'm most excited about in terms of improving too. So, look, we're going to look back at this in 12 months and go, oh, we can't even imagine where it's gone from here. So, yeah, super exciting in terms of that front. And then World Cup fever at the moment. Happy days. Decided to port Manager 11 to its own World Cup game. So you can come in here, you can take over any team at the World Cup, running on that old 1999 code. Themed this one for Japan, and the room went wild. So all live teams from the FIFA website, Claude cracked into its API for me, thank you Claude, and has loaded all the official images and players and whatnot. And then you're able to take on your friends and in single player there as well. Biggest takeaway for me though is everyone in this room has their own Manager 11. Right? And I think as startup founders as well, that's very true. So the audience that I was speaking to over in Japan probably wasn't so geared towards startup founding. But again, everyone's got that idea. Everyone's got that startup idea that you're probably working on right now, that Claude has just absolutely helped me to one shot. So for me, from a Pentium computer now to worldwide reach, as I said, those numbers have increased quite substantially recently. Bing, of all things, is driving a ton of traffic, so I'll work that one out later on. And as a big SEO fan, Claude can do wonders on that front too. So we've got 60,000 AI players on there. We've got over 300 human managers now, and in 16 countries. So when you see players from Portugal and Brazil and China and England and France playing your game, that's kind of cool. So look, who knows what the future holds? But for me, Manager11.com's alive. Manager11's been there for me anyway for the last 20 years, and it's good to see it out in the open. So thank you very much for listening to that component of the story.